Good afternoon. East Skakip Tanaquail Tana Skawatsan Eich Stalnap. Acknowledging we're on Cowichan Tribes territory. Welcome to those watching online and also a few people here in the audience. Myrna Moore and Tyson Loreth of BC Transit. Bruce Pazowski of Oak Transit and Carol Blatchford of Cowichan Community Services. And Mr. Wakeham, I believe we have one new business item to add to the agenda, do we not?
Yes, Mr. Chair, one small item, CVRD Transit Analyst Update.
Thank you. And any questions about that? So would somebody like to move that? Moved, seconded. Any questions? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. And the regular minutes from April 11th. Moved, seconded. Any questions, changes? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. Any new business arising? Mr. Wakeham?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I was hoping that we could leave that new business right to the end, not...
From the minutes.
Oh, from the minutes. No, sorry, my mistake.
All right.
There's no business.
And public input, period. Anyone from the public wishing to make a comment? Don't see anybody. No line forming today, so. No delegations, no correspondence, information. Mr. Wakeham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just a verbal update on what we talked about the last meeting on the appreciation event date. At our last meeting, we talked about doing a meet and greet for a customer appreciation event in mid-September to recognize two milestones this year, the 25-year anniversary for conventional service and 10 years for the commuter service. The meet and greet will be held at the Transit Hub at the Village Green Mall right next to London Drugs. And the time would be from 5:15 till 6:15 at night. And the smaller event will also be held in Lake Cowichan, also at the Transit Hub, which is on South Shore Road from 3:30 to 4:30. So really, we just need a date to be decided on today. The dates are rather limited in light of sort of the corporate calendar, and staff suggest Tuesday, September the 18th as a preferred date. There is a second alternative date that might not be as desirable, and that would be 2 days later on Thursday, September the 20th. But we note in the corporate calendar there's an innovative housing presentation from 7 till 9 at Ramada Inn that some may wish to go to. So I'm really just looking for a show of hands on which one of those dates would work, and then we will send out a formal RSVP request in due course.
Tuesday the 18th, or?
Would that work? It would be from 5:15 till 6:15, just for the 1 hour where the commuter and the conventional service overlap.
Does anyone prefer Thursday the 20th?
Just kidding.
I was going to suggest that because, I'm sorry, just because if we're coming to Avi Friedman, you know, we're in town anyway, but I'm easy, I guess. I'm just thinking of the time for directors to drive in for an hour, but if they were driving in for a whole evening, that makes more sense, and it's a little more greenhouse friendly, I think.
Yeah, wasn't that on the Tuesday? Do you have
No, it's on the
20th.
Thursday,
Okay.
2 days later.
20th,
It just
at
is.
7. So we could get there, right?
You could get there. Yeah, you could get there if you just wanted to do a back-to-back. And for the people that would be attending Lake Couch, it'd be back-to-back-to-back. Back-to-back-to-back. Yeah, they'd miss one? It'd be 3 meetings. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
well, that's a good reason.
On
not
the
to.
Tuesday or the Thursday? Okay,
Oh,
so Thursday?
Is the consensus the Thursday?
It
Is
looks
what we're
that
doing?
way.
Thursday from, okay. We will send that out. Oops. Thursday, September the 20th, okay.
All right, thank you, everybody. Mr. Wakeham reports, R1, Annual Operating Agreement.
All right, just getting organized. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is one of two similar agenda items that relate to the annual operating agreement. R1 being the regular AOA, and R2, the next report we'll go to, is the amended AOA. The AOA agreement is it's a regular yearly agreement that needs approval. And we're a bit delayed in this, bringing this one forward because it really is effective April 1. And that was due to some really important budget information we were waiting from the province that has since been worked out. So I'll go ahead and just read the purpose of the report. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the annual operating agreement with BC Transit effective April 1, 2018. And the recommended resolution, that it be recommended to the board that the annual operating agreement with BC Transit be approved for the 12 months commencing April 1, 2018.
So that's been moved and seconded. Any question on that? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. R2.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. R2 is the amendment to the annual operating agreement. This item is required due to the fare changes and the 1,500-hour conventional service expansion that started just a month ago, on July the 2nd. So again, the purpose of the report is to seek approval for an amendment to the annual operating agreement with BC Transit to include the conventional service expansion of 1,500 hours originally estimated at an annual cost of $65,000, which has been recently revised to an estimated annual cost of $58,000 for the July 2nd, 2018 service changes. The resolution is that it be recommended to the board that amendment number 1 dated July the 2nd, 2018 to the annual operating agreement with BC Transit to include the conventional service expansion of 1,500 hours and the estimated annual cost for the July 2nd, 2018 service changes be approved.
Thank you, and that was moved by Director Stone, seconded by Director Jackson. Any comments on that? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. And on to R3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I assume the next two reports will have a little bit more dialogue, I would think. There's a little bit more information to them. Report R3. This is also an item that's reviewed yearly, and for this year's document, which is attachment A, staff have taken a different approach and in what should be included in the plan for the next couple of years. So I just want to give a bit of a brief background before I read the recommendations here. So a little bit of history here is the purpose of the rolling 3-year plan is to provide the province each region's desired expansion initiatives over the next 3 years. Then the province takes all that information, puts it together, and figures out what the requests are from the local governments and what budget affordability they have. I'd like to point out that on last year's document, which is attachment B, which outlined the next 3 years, staff felt that with a few rather expensive initiatives that were on the go, the new transit facility, potential park and ride expansion, and an up-and-coming RFP that will be issued for the operation of the facility and transit, we chose to limit those items to only 2 small commuter requests, even though we're only obligated to the first-year items. However, for this year, the proposed new MOU for the years 2019 to 2022, staff have now included a number of initiatives, including a detailed expansion plan for custom service that have also been identified in the transit future plans and other updates. We've identified these as placeholders, so it's not an obligation at this point. You're only obligated for the first year of first year items that are identified. So except for a small 500-hour conventional improvement request in 2019 for an annual estimated cost of $23,000. So that's a little bit of background. The purpose of the report is to outline the proposed 3-year transit service expansion plan and the associated costs as identified in the Expansion Memorandum of Understanding, EMOU, supplied by BC Transit on July the 3rd, 2018, and to seek approval. There are 3 resolutions that will be recommended to the board. One, that the 3-year service expansion initiatives for years 2019/20 to 2021/22 outlined in BC Transit's letter of July 3rd, 2018 and the accompanying expansion memorandum of understanding be approved. That the 500-hour conventional service expansion targeted for July 2019 implementation be approved and the associated 6-month estimated cost of $11,616 be included in the 2019 CVRD transit budget for function 107. And thirdly, that the transit service expansion hours and associated costs for the years 2019/20 to 2021/2022 be incorporated into the 5-year financial plan for transit budget functions 106 and 107.
I have a question.
Thank you. Question, Director Stone was first, or were you moving it? Okay.
I'm supportive of this, but I'm just wondering, you know, the conversation around commuter options in the north end between Cowichan and Nanaimo, and I'm happy to see them in 2021, 22. But I wonder if there's any thought to moving that up a year and, you know, I know it's really hard to do on the fly, but looking at the September 20th, 2020 initiatives, including the improvements, evening and weekend service. And the reason that I say that is that, you know, although we've made some good improvements with the pilot project between Ladysmith and Duncan, and that has improved ridership on that route and the north end system overall, I still believe, and it's supported by the growing amount of community feedback. I thought it was a lot 3 years ago, but now I seem to get 5 or 6 calls per week for when are we going to get these Nanaimo services, when are we going to get them? And I do believe that if we're looking at getting the performance of the routes up to the places we would ideally like them to be, and we look at the success of the routes in the south end that feed into and the commuter transit, that somehow we might be able to make that a greater priority. And I understand there's a lot of pieces at play to make that happen, but, and I'm happy to support this because I'm happy to see it in there, but if there's any way we could move those initiatives up a year, that's what I'll be lobbying the provincial government for from a municipal perspective and BC Transit, and hopefully members of the board moving forward, that if we can get that connection from Cowichan to Nanaimo sooner, I think we'll see the routes even into the Chemainus area improve their performance quite dramatically once we get that connection, because there's still a lot of people. One of the emails I had was talking about even the medical services that they have to go to Nanaimo for. Our health authorities don't always line up their services with our municipal boundaries, and many people in Ladysmith are directed to Nanaimo, but there's no transit option for them to access those services. So for employment, for education, worker mobility, and for serving our growing number of seniors, I still have to say that I think that should be a higher priority in our expanded service going forward. And then I think it'll justify those other improvements to local routes because you'll see that demand grow within the existing framework that's there. But I'm happy to support this if it's moved, but I would like to, you know, as we move the conversation forward and it comes back to this table and to our friends at BC Transit, I can't stress enough how important I think that is. And I'll be accompanied with a good stack of letters from VIU, Nanaimo Airport, that all support those positions as well. And it's an important piece of their future plans as well, the educational and the airport as well, to get that transit service through there. It's not a question, just more of a plea.
I think it was after the RDN sent us a letter in reply.
I spoke with the chair of the RDN yesterday, and he seems to be supportive as well.
Oh, that's good.
So we
Mr.
do have
Wakeham?
work to do there, and I'll continue to try and do that work on my own time, and I don't want to take up the board's time with it, but I think that the indications from the Ministry of Transportation, the partners that we need in the north, in Nanaimo, and major economic impact people we have like VIU and the airport are all supporting it, and they'd like to see it tomorrow. But 2 years, 3 years down the road, the sooner the better.
Mr. Wakeham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple comments back on that. I think it's a valid comment. I think there's a couple things to consider here. I'm not sure what the implications are going to be in light of the Greyhound discontinuing their service to the interregions and the connection, and what influence that might have on the province for potentially more funding or sooner funding on that. So that's number one. Number two, we can move it up because years two and 3 are not obligations. They're just a commitment that we put in our 5-year transit plan, and that we work towards whatever administrative work we need to do to get it to the point of the following year would be moving it up. So it's just a move in our 5-year plan, and on this particular document, attachment A, we would just move it up a year. However, I see that actually requires, and Myrna, I'm going to look for your assistance here, this requires 2 new buses at this time. Buses are normally 18 months out for delivery. So if we move this up to September of 2020, that means now 18 months would be January of 2019. So in about 7 months, we would have to be committing to ordering those buses, which means you're virtually committing to that service at that point. It doesn't start for 18 months, but you're committing to the cost of those buses. So I guess, I just have one other comment, and then Myrna, I'm just gonna ask for clarification if that 18-month window is still accurate. The last one, which is probably more important of work for me to look at, is the maximum tax requisition limit. I need to look at that and review where we are with our estimated costs at certain times. And I think we're okay with what still we have on the horizon for the expenses that we see that are coming, which is the facility, potential park and ride expansion, some services. But I'd need to spend some time in particular with Joe Barry and looking at the last time we sought maximum tax requisition limit increase, I believe was December of 2016. I'm not sure if there's a 5-year limit on that, Mark, or not. Joe sort of indicated to me that it might not be. Because it's transit. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure at this point whether we can commit to that, but I would say that it's a valid comment, and I think we can do it on the paper, because we're not committing to it. We're just changing our 5-year plan. But I guess, can I just ask Ms. Moore?
Before we go to Myrna, can I just ask?
Sure, yeah.
So just to follow up with that, you know, and again, like I said, I'm good to support it the way it is. Do you think that we could just add a number 4 to the resolution, asking staff to explore those other items that you just indicated?
I think that's a great idea.
To help facilitate moving the Ladysmith or the Cowichan to Nanaimo connector up to 2020, 2021? Explore the potential for moving the Cowichan Nanaimo connector to 2020, 2021, pending that list of things you just said.
Yeah,
Got
well,
that,
Michelle. We're moving, I'm just gonna make some notes here if I may. We're moving Nanaimo up 1 here after reviewing CPRD issues. Okay, I think I've got that. Can I call on Myrna to just update? Is that what I mentioned still accurate with the ordering of the buses, as far as you know?
So, in terms of the type of vehicle, if it's a full-size vehicle, it would be requiring 18 months in advance. I think there needs to be some planning work that goes in here. I think Director Stone's right in the sense that we need to look at or relook at what we've done in the planning process in the past, and I think with some of the study work that we looked at with the VIU need, and the residents from Ladysmith going to VIU, we have a lot of demand going one way in the morning with a number of buses based on what we saw the market was. So I think we need to revisit that, and that will also determine what capacity we need in the type of vehicle. If it's the ARBOC type that's running in Ladysmith right now, that's not required as much advance notice to build out, but I think we need to do a bit more work and then find out what's going on, certainly on the Nanaimo side as well. We are currently doing a South Nanaimo local area plan to deal with Cassidy and the airport and areas A and C. So that's good information right now. So I think the piece to look at it again and to revisit, Jim's correct in the sense that we're looking out 3 years. The first year is critical in terms of committing the first year budget, but Jim still needs to do a 5-year plan. So if we married that together and added 2 more buses and those dollars, we would have to recalculate this for year 2. So I think, yes, I think it's definitely food for thought to go forward with, but 18 months is really what we need for a 40-foot full-size bus. Yeah.
Thank you. Director Marsh, did you have a question?
I can go back to the beginning, but it is
Okay. Go ahead, Director Marsh.
Yeah, my initial question was answered, but I'm wondering about the feasibility if it's a year or 2 out of electric buses. Are we anywhere close?
Nobody wants to touch that one with it. Yeah.
Well, through the chair, right now for Victoria, we're testing electric bus. That's certainly in service right now, and we're putting together a report, I think, in a 6-month time frame. So we'll be going from that piece and information that TransLink also had in terms of their trials to go forward to give any more further information
So
beyond.
it's a little early to know.
It's a little early to know, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Director Jackson, did you have a question? No? Okay. Director Stone, further follow-up?
I was just going to say, with the amount of electric bus people that are offering them for pilots, we could probably get one in 6 months, according to them, if we wanted to move things along. But yeah, and I'm glad you said that about the ARBOC bus. And I just a comment around the South Nanaimo Airport planning. If there's anything that we can do to participate, I know we're across the regional district boundary line, but whenever we do work with, whenever the airport does any of their work around the local area planning, they do include us. And it's specifically because, although it may be called the Nanaimo Airport, it's most relevant to our community in a lot of ways. So I'd be happy to, just provide any time or feedback that might help shape that. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Director Jackson, you wanted to move this? Okay, it's moved, seconded. Any further questions or comments on this? All right, with the addition of that one extra point in the resolution, so all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Wakeham, number 4. R4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I suspect this agenda item will have the most dialogue. So again, I'd like to start with a little bit of a brief intro or brief history, especially for the directors that haven't been here for more than one term. When the commuter service started back in October of 2008, the establishment of the commuter service in the transit bylaw was done, and I should say rather quickly, with the province agreeing to heavily subsidize that service with providing some free buses, if you will, as well as some other assistance as well. But nonetheless, with the annual costs of providing that service being established rather uniquely on the CVRD side, and based on the primary assumption that the South Cowichan areas, and to some degree North Cowichan, would be the likely main users of the service. Based on recent ridership data, surveys, and communication that we've had with our regular commuters, we now know there are many other areas that have regular users of this service, and not just the south end users, as many as we first expected. Also, Ladysmith joined the conventional service in 2013, but they were not added as a funding partner to the commuter service and currently do not participate in funding that. We also know there are some regular users from Ladysmith, of which, Myrna, I know there's 1 or 2 BC Transit full-time employees that use it regularly. Now that the service is well established, so this is 10 years in running now, and in order to get a better view of where the commuter service users were from, staff did a survey in April of 2018, and that provided a pretty good response. About 75% of our regular riders on a daily basis. Even though the survey was only for a bit of a snapshot of time, I believe it was 1 week, maybe 2, can't quite remember, but minimum 1 week, plus online. It did produce what I think all staff from BC Transit, MOTI, First Canada, the operating company, what we expected, and that is that there are more users from further away areas in Cowichan than not just the south end. That being said, staff felt it would be appropriate to have a review of the current funding percentages and partners. Some of the directors who were here back in 2013 and 14 will recall we went through a pretty thorough service review on the conventional side, where we were analyzing 8 or 9 different models and quite extensive, massive spreadsheets, and it was quite an interesting exercise. It also had, the conventional service also at the time had a different criteria. It had 3 different items that were looked at, added together, and proportioned out the cost to the participating areas. And after that review was concluded, the best model that the committee and ultimately the board approved was the model of proportion cost being based on assessed value. And there were some rather large increases to certain areas, so the members at the time agreed to phase it in over 3 years. I should also mention that there's no one method it's going to be perfect for everybody. There's no one method where everybody has benefits here. There's definitely going to be some that are affected more than others. And yet, with Mark here, Mark, I think he can confirm, all CVRD services that are cost shared use the assessment as the method of allocating the cost. So that being said, I know there's lots of information and spreadsheets here, and we can throw one up on the screen if we need to, but I'll just read out the purpose and resolutions. So the purpose of the report is to provide options and a recommendation for a change to the Cowichan Valley Commuter Transit Service funding method used in Function 106, and to include the town of Ladysmith as a participating area. The recommended resolution, there's 2, that it be recommended to the board that a bylaw be prepared to amend the Transit Service Establishment Bylaw number 1450 by 1, adding the town of Ladysmith to sections 7 and 8, which pertain to the commuter transit service, and 2, changing the apportionment costs in section 8 to assessment based. I'd like to just add one other comment that I should have before that. We don't need a decision today, but we do need it by the end of October. So if you can't come to consensus or an agreement here, we could, again, discuss this at the October transit meeting. I think it's the 10th or 11th. And that being said, in order for the bylaw to get changed, in order for the province to accept it in time to get it into 2019's budget for tax purposes.
Director Stone.
I can't speak for other areas, and obviously, Ladysmith's been freeloading for this long, but we know that commuter transit hasn't really had as much of an impact for the north end, but putting my regional hat on, I can't speak for other areas that will be affected, but I'm happy to join the commuter transit system and keep the eyes on the vision for the future of the transit system within the region. And I look forward to the day where you could get on a bus in Victoria and go to Duncan and Ladysmith and Nanaimo and beyond. So I support the recommendation.
Would you like to move it, or are there any other questions? Moved, seconded. Thank you, Director Stone. And yeah, Area A, by my calculations, the average house has been paying $9 per year extra for that over what would in the future. So no further comments or questions? All those in favor? Oh, Director Marsh?
I'm a bit confused now that I'm looking again. Which model are we voting on?
By assessed
Assessment-based.
value.
Assessed values, which is Model 1, if you will.
So that would mean that North Cowichan's contribution would double.
Go to 36% from 17, that's correct.
So how much is that on the average home?
I'll give the impact per 100,000, it's 66 cents higher. The increase would be 66 cents per 100,000. So if the average home is 400,000, right? 4 times
Okay.
66 cents would
I
be.
think it's less than that, yeah, so somewhere around 250. So one trip on the bus.
Remember, this is based on the taxation of I'll round it off, 229,000. That's the 2018 tax requisition for the commuter function. And I'll also suggest to you that the draft budget that I've just finished today that'll be submitted, it's the same number at this point. It will obviously go up in following years when the new facility is built and when the RFP is done, but that's what it's based on. That's what the sheet shows as well.
So if I may have a follow-up. So if we vote on this now, this is the model that we're using forever going forward?
Mr. Chair, if I can respond. So that would be, this would come into play January 1 of 2019. So in the 2019 budget, we would switch over, like we did the conventional a number of years ago, it would switch over to assessment-based,
And that's how it would stay?
unless there's a desire for some reason to change the bylaw again, but
Well, I like the sentence in the spirit of regional cooperation. And I do hope that in the future, when regional things come up, that North Cowichan would get the same courtesy for the pool and some other things that we are paying a disproportionate share that's a lot more than 66 cents. Thank you.
Any other comments? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. On to R5.
Mr. Chair, it's attachment B, Director Jackson. Sorry, it's attachment B, if you're looking for the schedule. Sorry.
R5, the survey report.
Oh, the big, the big report of a couple hundred pages here. So there's a lot of pages in this report, and it's just for information only, as it provides detailed information and results from 2 of BC Transit surveys that they undertake each year. Attachment A is the feedback from the public for each province, for each region in the province. And attachment B is the feedback from local government representatives, that's myself and the CAO. For the public survey, I want to point out a couple items, just to bear in mind here, that the sample size is very small. It's only 400 individuals, which could skew or impact the results. And there's no 2 regions or transit systems that are the same. So there's many reasons that we've pointed out before where there can be differences in data if you're comparing 2 different regions. And also, later in the year, I think it'll be our October meeting, we get what we call the annual report card or the annual performance report, which to me is a good tool for seeing how our service is doing. It's slightly different than this one. So again, a lot of information. And that's really what it's for, Mr. Chair, if there's any questions or comments that either Myrna or myself can answer.
Seeing none, that was for information. Don't believe there's any unfinished business. On to the new business, Mr. Wakeham.
Nobody wanted to read these hundreds and hundreds of pages. Sorry, we are on
I read it.
new business. Oh, Mel? No. Sorry, Mr. Chair, we're on new business, is that correct?
We are.
Oh,
yes.
okay, thank you.
CVRD
Dory
Transit
just sitting
Analyst
next to
update.
Yeah, this is just an update. I just want to let you know that on September the 4th, Aaron Annis over there is going to be leaving the Transit Division in pursuit of a new challenge. So I'm really sorry to see her move on. She's been a great asset to our really small division, the Transit one, and she's been the main go-to person, for those who didn't know, on what I would classify the day-to-day transit operations, and liaises with so many entities, being MOT, all the municipalities, numerous departments within BC Transit, trying to deal with all the shelter and the benches and the bus stop installs and any new service we put into place. That's really her working behind the scenes getting that done. So, and of course, she's working with all kinds of CVRD staff and directors. The good news is she's not going far. She's actually just going up a floor and staying with the CVRD as she's accepted the new CVRD procurement specialist position, and she'll be working with Anthony Jeffries. So even though she's still with Transit for a few weeks here, I just want to publicly thank Erin for all what she's done for Transit. She's helped make some real improvements. And unfortunately, that means we're going to be challenged a bit on some items, and so that leaves just myself in the Transit Division, and so Myrna and Tyson, I'm going to be probably making a few more phone calls your way to assist, so. Anyway, yeah. So that's it on Erin. Again, thanks, Erin.
Yes, thank you. All right, question period. Are there any members of the public here who would like to ask any questions? Seeing none, and there's no closed session business, motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you very much.